Hello and welcome to the Frustration of Freedom podcast or webinar, whatever we want to call it these days. I'm your host, Troy Eadie, and so these podcasts are all about bringing some great friends of mine or experts within the industry to help us overcome some of the frustrations that we're facing within our business. And ultimately to be able to get some practical advice, hear what's happening in their space to help us move towards our version of freedom. So today, welcome, Warren and Chris. Welcome.
Everyone.
Thank you.
So, so what we'll do is, Warren, maybe if you could introduce yourself first, just a bit who you are and what you do.
Okay, thank you for that, Troy. For those who haven't heard me speak before, my background is as a owner of a private manufacturing business for close to 20 plus years, probably close to 25 years. I converted a number of years ago out of that into the advisory space when people were asking me how to help them with growth solutions in the private advisory space. So my passion these days is working with and helping SMEs with their growth strategies, their turnaround strategies, and their complex solutions. So, that's my background. Started off in accounting, unfortunately, but now moved into more broadly business expertise. So thank you.
No, beautiful. And look, I'm really quite intrigued for you to share, some of your thoughts around, how for people to think and particularly lead their teams through this time. So thanks for joining us. Chris, would you like to introduce yourself and what you do?
Obviously, lover of coffee. My name's Chris Smith and CEO of Happy HR. Look, thanks again, Troy, to enable us to be as part of this today. Happy HR is a cloud-based technology platform that comes with a range of HR support. We deal with everything, the good, the bad, and the ugly of HR and help businesses manage that all in the cloud and really help them for never having to worry about HR again, which is really the goal. Been in business 5 years and have emerged as a market leader in our space. We do recruitment and other things at a fixed fee as well, rather than percentage-based fees. So really out there to save people money, but also give them absolute best practice advice around HR.
Yeah, beautiful. And look, that's a big reason why we've got you on here today, Chris. Looking forward to being able to pick your brain and hear a bit more around what's been happening within your clients, the different industry sectors. To hear maybe some good news stories, or even some of the more challenging stories and how you've been able to help and what people can get from it.
No
So, look, the purpose of today is really to talk all things people. Last week we spoke all things money. We had Judo Bank, we had Tag Financial and Warren on here. But today it's more about the people. If you're needing to make some difficult conversations or choices around your people, if you're needing to utilize your people to be able to inspire them, to get them back on track, or any of those sorts of things, we're going to be covering today. During this, you will see down the bottom somewhere, you'll be able to put your questions in. I've got a bunch of questions. I'm curious to pick their brains today, but if you've got some questions, please put them in the question box and we'll make sure we get round to them at the end. So, Chris, let's start with you. I'm really curious to get a bit of an update in your world. We've had a similar conversation maybe 3 or 4 weeks ago, and we were in the thick of it. But in the last 3 to 4 weeks, can you tell me what are some of the things you've seen and what's been happening?
It's been interesting. People have gone through this roller coaster. I've been saying to people out there, be kind to your accountant and bookkeeper because they've been going through hell just trying to figure out JobKeeper. So there's been those things. I think at the start, people were quite reactionary and they really looked at their business model and then they made immediate cutbacks. So redundancies and so forth. That was a big part of the start.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of people doing those, taking that opportunity to get rid of people in ways they shouldn't have. So we guided them through, hey, can you repurpose them? How can you actually restructure them in the business? That was some good conversations there. It's led now through to JobKeeper where, it's great that that's available. And for the positive side of JobKeeper, your business had a reduction of 30%, and you've got this ability to get $1,500 a fortnight and so on and so forth, which has been great. What I'm seeing now is a lot of frustrated employers who have got people who are casual, they're getting JobKeeper, and then all of a sudden that casual employee can't turn up to work because they're not accepting any shifts. And under mandate, under the Fair Work Act, you've got people that, as a casual worker by definition, can be offered a shift and they need to accept it. They don't have to accept it. So now you've got people getting JobKeeper, getting paid, and they figured out pretty quickly, I don't have to work here, which is you're entitled to do. And that's been stressful for employers because they're now needing to negotiate with employees to say, look, I need you to do some work, because otherwise they're still forking out money to people who can't get JobKeeper. So that's been unbelievably stressful. I'll give you a point in case. I had yesterday a call with a florist. It's Mother's Day coming up. I need you to do a few extra hours. This particular employee earns about $300 a week in casual wages. She's actually currently getting $750 a week and then won't work any additional hours. It's very challenging out there for employers right now.
Thank you for the update. And so Warren, I'm keen to hear. So I saw you last week, which is cool. But from your space and the angle that you come from, can you give us a bit of an update from your area?
Look, in regards to the HR space, I'd probably defer more to Christopher on that. But in regards to what I'm seeing, having come across what Chris has been talking about in the casual staff, and that's a concern. There is some confusion, though, around how staff can be utilised. And I think that's going to be an ongoing issue. And I'd probably defer back to Chris in a moment, a bit more commentary around that. I'm finding some firms have stood down people, or call it stand down, or I'll ask another question around that later on, and they're re-engaging them now that JobKeeper's come on board and re-engage them into the business, but unsure how to utilise them and how to engage them properly. And if they do come back in, I think there's a big discussion that needs to be had. How do you utilise your full-time versus your casuals, your full-time staff? How do you utilise them in the business to get some value back into the business? Because I'll just make up a bit of a story here. A business that might have 20 staff, if they are, just make it simple, 50% down, therefore 50% of the staff are genuinely occupied and busy making an income for the business, and the other 50% aren't really required. The genuine discussion comes down, well, we're paying the other 50%. How do we get them involved in the business to at least a $1,500 value, or rotate them through, so that we can actually build some assets back into the business and come out of this stronger? And I think that's probably a discussion I wouldn't mind having a little bit more today, and hopefully enlightening a few business owners about how to do that, and see what you're coming across, Chris, in that space. And also, there has been a little, if I can just have a little bit of a commentary on this, and it's open-ended question at the other end. I'm in favour of what JobKeeper's done and what they've been trying to do and achieve. It's kept that connection with the workforce and not have people lining up down at the centre link lines, which looks terrible. But one of the things I realised in the last week or two, and I've sort of documented recently, is there's a hidden benefit with what the JobKeeper's done. It's avoided or delayed businesses who have got more than 15 employees, and again, Christopher, jump on this later, having to actually pay redundancies because they couldn't afford to pay it anyway. I've already come across a couple of businesses, and I just did a back-of-the-envelope calculation the other day, with what they're expecting this week from JobKeeper, what they've already received in cash boost, what they've already received in the payroll tax refund. If it wasn't for those numbers, the doors should have been closed already 5 or 6 weeks into this. So if on top of that they had to actually physically pay redundancies, there's a real problem.
That's absolutely correct. Redundancy, Warren, is the mechanism of redundancy is also about the sequential order of which you do it. So you can try and limit, who's first in, first in, first out, reduce the redundancy payments, all that. You're 100% correct. It's the sequential orders is critical. And by doing it correctly, you stay in business and thrive. If you don't, then you actually end up shutting the doors. You are very right by saying what you're saying.
And what concerns me, though, to some extent, and I don't want to be alarmist, is that the JobKeeper, what's great, is going to try and keep people in business and things going through. I'm seeing at the end of the JobKeeper payment, which is late September, a few other things drop off in regards to the offerings. I think businesses may not get back to their, I strongly believe they won't get back to their pre-COVID-19 income levels, and therefore they will still have to make some redundancies.
Yep.
And dare I say it, whilst they're, and you comment again on this, Christopher, I'm not sure if the last in, first out rule actually has to apply, or it's job specific as to what skills we need in the business going forward.
Yep.
Because if that's the case, you might be having to make some people redundant that have got a few years tenure and will cost the businesses in October, late September, October. They still have to pay the redundancies.
Yeah. I think that's an interesting scenario. So lots of business owners have asked me, what's going to happen in September? And I'm like you, Warren, I don't want to be alarmist, but I can see this cliff and it's just everybody jumping off one after the other, right? So it's important. I'm a big believer in, the sort of stuff that you do, Troy, yourself, right? And anyone watching this, you really, if you not just pick Warren's brain, pick Troy's brain as well. He's a smart guy and he's got some very good strategies if you actually take the time to listen, and you should. And it's why you're on this bloody seminar anyway. But the point is, you got to start with your mission, vision, and values. What is my new vision? The pre-COVID vision might not be appropriate now. You might need to actually go, does my vision need to change for my company? And then on top of that, you've then got what is my mission? And what do I do day to day now? Has that changed? And also, you know what? Out of this, I've seen employee values that I really love and behaviors and values that I really don't love. So I'm going to now tweak my values as well. And then underpinning that, you need to sit down and do a back of the envelope SWOT analysis and say, what are my strengths? What are my weaknesses, et cetera, and turn those weaknesses into strengths and turn those threats into opportunities and so on and so forth. But underpinning that is what is my new operational benchmark. So going back to what you said, Warren, it is about saying, okay, my business from September to next, say July, so July 2021, is I need to have this is my operational benchmarks today, and this is where I need to be. So what are the roles that I need in my company and what skills are required? And frankly, what is the measurement of performance? So you've got a title and a summary, you've got a performance indicator, and you've got a measurement of that performance. And that measurement aligns to that operational benchmark per se. Now, what that means is you're going to quickly discover two things. One is you've got people that either can be transitioned to a new role, and if you do the change management right, that's all good, or people that you either need to, there's people you need to make redundant. Now, those people you're making redundant may well be first in, first out, or they may be a 10-year veteran in your company, and they need to go for very clear reasons. So then you need to then do your cash flow planning to plan for those redundancies if they apply. Okay. Now, at that point, you then transition people to their new roles now. So when this all really starts to turn, you can really come out of the gates. You know that Johnny Smith's going to be made redundant. You've already made that decision. If they can't be repurposed, you've got no choice. But that's the position you may find yourself in. So there's that sequential order, again, of making that decision. And if you don't have a process to decision making, then you are going to make poor decisions on what do people actually need to do and what's that ROI and so forth. So it's really interesting to work out what is your blueprint, what is the new normal, and what are the staff and the measurements you need to actually actively measure in your business going forward.
Yeah, well said, Chris. Well said. Yeah, because look, Warren, you and I have been, particularly yourself, and maybe you want to elaborate a little bit. We've been talking about what's going to happen in a few months' time, and you were telling me that some of the stats was like 80% or something. You said a lot of businesses went into this situation in a bad situation to start with. They're already scraping their butt along the ground. So then they've come into this situation. We've been given a pill, or we've got that mask on our face. But it's almost, when when the support stops, it's not like people will be in the same situation. Like, because I'm seeing a lot of people take on debt that they potentially shouldn't be taking on. Plus, if they're not paying their liabilities, so a lot of people just jump straight to, oh, stop paying rent, stop paying taxes, stop paying a lot of things. So then not only is the lifeline going to stop, but you're actually going to come out with a lot more liabilities and a lot more debt that you even had before. Warren, do you want to elaborate a bit more on that?
Look, I can. I'm probably just mindful about the fact that there's a lot in that. Really is a lot. And I want to focus a little bit more on the human side of what all that's going to happen, and both from an employee and an employer point of view, the business owner, being in the SME sector, because we're talking about, you're right, we have chatted a lot about at the end of this time, this 6 months, and Christopher's talking about the cliff is coming. The cliff's coming for a number of areas. It's not just JobKeeper stopping. The banks have said they're going to give you about 6 months of reprieve. But as you just said, they're not actually taking you off the hooks. They're not giving you a waiver. They're just deferring it. The rent, there is a minor amount, or a level of wavering with the rent, but they're still going to come back and they're going to ask for it at the end of it. You've got a few one-off payments which are coming through now, which are a benefit, but there's a number of areas that come end of September, and maybe it might some of the issues might run for another month. But my concern is the human aspect of both the employees and the employers, being the business owners. What's their mental state and what's their life going to look like, getting closer and closer to the end of September when that ticking time bomb is about to go?
Yeah.
And that's probably where the focus of our discussion's been. I won't probably go too far into all that today, because I just want to get people prepared for the fact that you do need to focus on literally there's under 5 months to go before the end of September, and that goes pretty quickly. And now we're already into what's classified as a new norm, because there's no more new benefits being given out by the government. Everything that they've done has basically been tabled. We had Josh Frydenberg yesterday announce it's costing the economy, costing the government, I think it's $4 billion a week. That's a flag for saying we've got no more. And what we do want to spend at the end of this is on infrastructure work that we can generate jobs, but that will be a very slow trickle through effect to the economy, and it'll be patchy. So I personally think it's business owners, for their personal sake and the majority of their employees, really have to be mindful about these next 4.5, 5 months to prepare themselves for the cliff dropping off, so that, as Chris was saying before, if they have to make tough decisions with redundancies, they're well prepared for that. And I like your conversation, Chris, about looking at your value system too. It's, you guys, Troy would always know, I'm really high focus on your vision, why you're doing something, but it's a good time to reevaluate it. Some business owners may reevaluate what they're doing. And they may come out of it with a slightly different goal out of this. But I think it's critical to reevaluate the business owner's values and seeing which staff are aligned with them. But dare I say it, also business owners need to sit back a little bit. I don't lecture a little bit here, but from a human resource point of view, just be careful about what their leadership style looks like during this, because I've seen a few actually start to lose it. And I can understand they're only people, but you want your staff to actually step up and work with you during this period as well. And rather than trying to drag them through it, like what Chris was saying, with people saying, I'm not coming off the bench, I'm being paid to sit at home. If you've got a workplace that it's got energy and people are going forward and people are all working towards the same outcome, you've got more chance that your staff are going to lean into the solution. So it's probably a bit of a rambling conversation there, but I'm just focusing a little bit on a range of different ways to get clear that there needs to be a bigger solution before September.
Yeah, and so one thing that comes to mind when you're both talking about having that plan, that vision, the values, uniting the team around it. I think one thing I'm really enjoying doing with our clients is reassessing who they're best at helping and how clear are they on that. If a business and the entire team can get really clear on who they can help in this environment, what's their strategy to be able to communicate with them, bring those clients on or work with them, and then support them, better than they ever have before. And then if it is a case of having to bring on new work, well, what's the number? And what's the number potentially counting down? If you have a whole team unified around, okay, so the vision might be to achieve a new future. There might be some core values that underpin that, but then you're all really very clear on who you can help and how many of those things or services do you want to be able to sell or bring on and help to be able to achieve the goal. Because then you take the intangible, then you make it tangible, and I think you've got a really good mix. That way, when you're having your Zoom team meetings, there's a bit of context. The purpose we're having these meetings is to be able to unite as a team. We're counting down from 30 or 40 to be able to achieve this sort of goal. So let's start. Warren, how's your week been? What are you focusing on? What's your tasks? You know what I mean? I think it's a nice bundle that puts it all together. I think I have this saying, some people focus on the past. Yeah. So these are your friends that every time you catch up with them, that it's like, oh, back in the day, remember when we were so good at playing footy or at school, this happened. They're always talking about memories. Then you've got some people that are stuck here and now, and the majority of us are here. It's right now, what's happening, and you're just dwelling on the thing right now. Whereas what we need to do is we need to look to the future. If we can unite our team around, well, what do we want it to look like? Let's not worry so much on what's happening with the news. We understand that. What's the future look like? And then what are the steps? And if we did these steps, would we achieve those goals? So look, I didn't intend this conversation to go this way, but what I'm taking from this, from both of you, is it's less so much about the tough conversations we need to make with our staff, but it's more so about the business owners taking that step forward. Let's create a plan. Let's unite the team. Let's start moving forward and have a plan. Would you agree?
If I could chime in, there's two parts to this though. This is what I see. Going back to what you just said about the future and what Warren said about people losing it. Okay. So I'm telling you now, people watching this right now, internally, they've got this volcano, and internally they might be the duck right now. They're pretty cool, but underneath they're paddling, right? And they can feel that volcano brewing, right? It is just so everyone knows it's normal to feel that. What is really important, if people go, I've really been thinking about this a lot the last week because I've been dealing with a lot of business owners that are going, employees this, employees that. And I'm like, is it the leadership style? What are you doing wrong? What are you doing right? How can you improve? The hypothesis that I currently have that I'm working through in my thought process, doesn't mean it's wrong or right, is business owners have a clear vision always on where they're going. They don't articulate that vision well most of the time, but they have a clear vision. And when someone goes outside of the square to go that extra mile because they want to see the business succeed, and then an employee doesn't follow a set thought process about why they're doing it, what happens is the owner goes, hey, that's not what I want from you. And then the employee gets dejected because they've gone outside the square, they're trying to help, but there's if business owner goes, you've missed all these steps, or you haven't thought about X, Y, and Z. So the employee gets upset. I think what's really important for business owners to do, based on what I said earlier, and what you said, Troy and Warren, is you've got to think of the future. You've got to think about the position descriptions, the missions and the values and so forth. But you have to actually step back for a second and go, how do I need my people to think right now? So I've got a project I need to do. What are the steps in that project or that process? Is there a better way to do that? Is there a better allocation of human resources? Do we outsource it? Do we do it internally? To have a better and more predictable outcome on that activity, what training should we involve people in? And so on and so forth. So when a business owner can see a certain activities being done, they know that their employees actually understand the process. Now, they might be empowering their employees to create a new process, but the employees need to know there's a method to, is that the right process or discovery that they can then go to the employer saying, this is what we thought about, this is what we've gone and researched, this is how much it's going to take. So with all this information, are you okay with me going through this project or process plan. When that's achieved, employers stop losing it. That's what I've seen. And now they're seeing people going, it's going to take a little bit longer to do some projects, but the outcome is clearly understood by all parties. Because it's clearly understood, the communication doesn't break down. Now, if you put it from the perspective of the employee, I've gone out of my way, I've done this in my own time, I've created this awesome whatever, and it's not to the expectation of the employee, doesn't matter what the employer says, they're going to punch that employee in the face and go, look, I don't like what you've done. That's all they're going to hear. What they need to understand is, hey, we didn't agree on a process here. So can we please work together on understanding the process? So I'd implore everyone to work out what is the way you're going to help your employees to think, because they do want to go above and beyond, but you need to empower them to understand how you think and what things you need checked off before starting a project or initiative. And I'm seeing that a lot at the moment. And what's happening is communication breakdowns going, well, bugger it, I'm not going to do anymore, where you actually need that person to do more. But what both parties failed is the employee and the employer on this occasion is working out what's our communication flow and how do we understand how to move forward in that project. And what you said, Troy, is that future-proofs the future activity. So now they're thinking like the future of saving money, being more efficient and other. So the communication flow of change management is being done on the fly at the moment because we have a new norm, but employees and employers need to get on the same page. I'm seeing a lot of disengagement that can be quickly actually overcome by saying what I've just said, like come up with a process. But that has been a cause of people losing it. And they don't mean to lose it, these employers. It's just that they can't understand how someone's thinking like that because they're thinking on a different plane. It's about getting in alignment again.
Could I just jump in and add some value to that, Chris? Because if it's all right, what I hear you saying, and I see it a lot, is that business owners, majority of private business owners, have never been taught actually properly and formally how to run a business and develop and grow a business.
Yep.
And in crises like this, they're having to take on a lot of issues at once and try and implement a lot of new things at once. Yep. And it's a lot to take on board. They're trying to change their leadership style, involve the staff, create a new strategy, work out what's going to happen in the future, learn Zoom, worry about what's happening with all the government offerings. There is a lot for business owners to take on board. It is overwhelming. Yeah. And what concerns me is most business owners have got, it's not a concern, but you can understand when I finish the conversation. What concerns me is most business owners have an incredibly high level of personal responsibility. Yep. They think it's up to them to get the answer.
Yep.
And therefore they generally work really hard. So right now, one of the solutions is let's work harder. And they can't. They're already at max.
Yep.
Yeah. They're going to burn themselves out. So what I've been trying to get the message out is utilise what benefits the government are giving you right now. Lean into your team like you're saying, Christopher. Learn quickly how to get them involved, but reach out and get specialists to come in and help you. And that might sound like, well, why am I spending money at a time that I can't afford to? It's almost going to be the reverse. If you don't get the right strategy, the right structure, the right process in place, that ticking time bomb in the September is going to go off and you could be in a bigger mess afterwards.
Oh, that's right.
So
you go, Chris.
I think what's important is everybody needs to, what we're saying here is very important. Understand what your future looks like. You need to actually do almost a daily cash flow budget from now until at least, July next year would be my tip. And understand the impacts of your expenditure now and how it affects your future. So you got your cash flow. Employees do want to do more, and tell them, like, I'm at max, I need you to step up, but this is the process that I want you to follow. So I have some control over my allocation of resources, being your wage, being your effort on a day-to-day. That's incredibly important. So you don't have to, like you're saying, Warren, work harder.
Mm. So I've got some really practical tips to help implement, I think, the things that the two of you have been talking about. So I think one of them is really important. You get an Excel spreadsheet that's in Google, and you put task, by who, and date. So if you want to inspire your entire team to help contribute to the innovation of the business, just have a list and innovate the list. Chris, I can relate with seeing, so a lot of team members, sometimes they're giving ideas, but if their cup is already full, they're feeling like they're getting rejected all the time. But if you just have a spreadsheet that's got all the ideas of the team, and then collectively you prioritize it and you say, we're going to work from the top down. Now, throughout the next week, if you have an idea, add it to the bottom of the list, we'll prioritize it and we'll get there. But everyone can now see we're moving forward, we're ticking things off. Now, if you're not ticking things off, you're going to upset the team just as bad. So that'd be the first one. Second one is a book. I've been handing this book out so much. It's called Swallow the Happy Pill. It's just a really good, simple book just about, just managing your state. One of the best things to do is you just hand that out to your entire team. Get everyone, you can listen to it, look at the summary, whatever. I think that's second thing. Third thing is a default calendar. So I've seen a lot of businesses that have, their Monday meetings or their Friday meetings or huddles or however you've been operating your toolboxes, potentially they have changed. I think it's really important that you have a default calendar, and it's set up within the default calendar is a very set structure. So on Monday, it might be setting up the week, and on Friday, it's packing it down. Normally, our clients would normally just have one meeting, which is just a Monday, setting up the week, so reviewing and future pacing. But I highly recommend start the week. What do we aim to get done? And same thing, everyone just has a list, and we all look at it. If we all did these things, would we achieve our goal? Yes. Then at the end of the week, it's just now you're just reporting. So if you keep it laser focused, you can make them shorter and then more specific. Because I've just seen some of our clients get a bit frustrated that they're having these meetings. You got everyone on Zoom and everyone's doing a lot of talking, but then the results aren't there. So if you keep it very specific and very short, the start, the end of the week, and then you can have little check-ins. And then one thing that's maybe a little bit, might be a bit corny or a bit hard to do, but I highly recommend it, is you've got to have Zoom meetings as if you might be doing with some of your friends. Have lunch together as a team. What my business partner, Glenn, he's just a gun at these. He's come up with games. So, play games with your team, have lunch with them, talk about how they're feeling, what they're eating, what are their own plans, even just have a time for them to create their own family situation. Where do they see it? You might not want to have those conversations, but I think the main point is you don't have to go too deep, but you've got to have a bit of the fun kind of office banter, bring that in at some point, bring the team in, because if you're stressed and you need results, then you're going to need to keep the team together. You can't just be push without a bit of the environment. So that they would be the key things that I think that would help. If you practically implement them, they'll help with a lot of the things you've been saying, Chris.
Yep.
Beautiful. So, I'm quite curious, particularly from you, Warren. Where do you see things going from here? You're just on mute still there, Warren.
Sorry, I'm back on.
Here we go. Gotcha.
Yeah,
yep.
That's better. Sorry about that. I don't want to at this stage sound too alarmist, but I just want people to start to be aware. And I picked up from Christopher's conversation before. I think a lot of business owners on the inside are feeling that volcano. It's a good analogy. And I know it's about to go off. They're just, at the moment, and I've written a paper on this recently, where I think the government Panadols made them feel a little bit comfortable at the moment. So the Panadol's starting to kick in, but it's going to wear off. And I think a lot of the discussions around what people will need to do with their team day by day, week by week, all the way through this are critical. You've got to get those micro things right. But I'm also really concerned that people will believe a whole series of micro things will solve their bigger picture problem. They need a macro solution to their business going forward. They need a major piece of strategy work or a selected range of option A, B, C, or D, because they don't really know yet when they come out the other end of September, and I say September just because the money's starting to dry up then and things will get back to a less support position, they don't know if they're going to be 10% down, 15% down, 30+% down. And it will be something in that magnitude. It's not going to be 10% up. At best, look at the moment, we already know that immigration's effectively been turned off. Overseas students effectively turned off. The travel industry has been turned off. No one's coming in to create that demand that we had pre-COVID. So, there'll be very few exceptions in the Australian economy that won't be affected up to the tune of 10+% down post-COVID. So I think people have to really seriously consider what their strategy options are going forward. Because when you're clear on your strategy options A, B or C, then you can start to pack in behind it all the really strong foundation micro decisions you need to make to support it. Because there's no point having a great plan if you haven't got the team behind it and the day-to-day actions, as you've both been saying, to support it. And that comes back to Chris's conversation about it might be nice to say be clear on your vision. I'm not being disrespectful. I always say to people be clear on your vision, but you might have to have 3 visions out of this, and there might be medium-term visions. A is survival, B is to resize, D is to merge with someone else, or is it time to actually sell up and actually get out? I don't know. I don't want to sort of preempt answers, but I think that macro position needs to be determined pretty quickly to give you the best part of this 4.5, 5 months runway to implement it to the way you need to.
I think the time frame right now is, you've got 5 months, right? And you really, I like to work with daily cash flows, and I also work with, budget versus actual versus variance. And I look at each line, every single line item, literally, and work out how can I reduce that cost, right? How can I maximize my revenue? I've had quite a few board meetings that I've been pulled into over the last 5 weeks, and CFO is going to a CEO, hey, give me a number for wage cost percentage, and like the CEO is like, I'm not prepared to give you that number. Like, what do you think, Chris? And I'm like, 0. It's like, well, you can't have a 0 wage cost, Chris. It's like, no, we need to work out how we can get the best outcome of whatever that expenditure actually is based on our new revenue position. And we need to then work out what is the direction of the company, both on a product service perspective and what are the personnel required to drive those initiatives and whatever it might be. I think what is very important that business owners, like the Panadol scenario is a really good analogy, is there is going to be opportunities that if you people keep saying, look at the low-hanging fruit. Well, there's actually fruit sitting on the ground right now. You don't even have to pick it up, rip it off the tree. There's grants that are available. The Melbourne City Council did a government grant that you could do $2,000 on professional development, $5K on digital spend, $10K of change management, $5 million. As a business, could you tap into that and then help your customer get access to that to give you revenue? There is opportunities absolutely everywhere if you're prepared to look outside the box. So I think it's what I love the why, how, what situation. The why, as an example, is who you are pre-COVID. The how might be where are you now, and then post-COVID, where are the actual opportunities? So I really would implore you look at if you've got production in a manufacturing business, what else can you produce? Can you contract manufacture? Can you create new brands or new opportunities? If you're in the service business, like consultants and recruitment and other, what other things can you do for your clients to add value, and why would they use you going forward? There is an opportunity that will come out of every way of thinking out the box. It doesn't mean it's going to be your new business model, but it may give you 10% more revenue. It might bring you back to an even Stevens. There is going to be opportunities out there if you're willing to look. But at all cases, you need to know your numbers. You need to know what percentage of revenue goes towards wage costs, COGS, leasing, etc., and actually know your numbers. And like you're saying, Warren, you absolutely need to make the calls now. You should already know on phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. If any one of those phases happens, this is your plan. You already know, so you are mentally prepared to do that. And in some cases, you may need to get a Troy or a Warren or a Happy HR to help you with making those calls, but create those relationships now. Get your house in order, because you're going to need to make some tough calls based on how your future looks. And I just implore you to really start now. Like if it's going to be positive, great. How can you make it more positive? If it's going to be negative, then know that regardless of the situation, that when that funding stops, your revenue, if you haven't got a certain benchmark that you're hitting, people have got to go. And you've got to do that analysis of training versus rehire and whatever. And there's rules around redundancy. But it's certainly, you need to put that oxygen mask on first, but you put it on now, not in September. So you already know on what to do and what the process is going to be. So there's a cash flow that is absolutely put in place, and you know the economic impacts to your business as well as the psychological impacts to your business and your business culture in general.
Mm-hmm. And then I think to even take it a step further is try to predict the future as best as possible. Like if you have, or if you don't, what's your call volume? What's your email volume? What's your quote volume? What quotes or opportunities are you winning versus losing? Out of your client base or the work that you're doing, ask the question, why are you winning this particular work and not this work? And then how can then you use that data to then be able to tweak either, your marketing message, your marketing collateral, your marketing systems. If you've got salespeople, or maybe you're a 3 or a 1 partner firm, so you do all the sales and the work. But I think it's really important to use that data right through from the KPIs right through to the cash flow that Chris was talking about, to use that data. So I look at it, whichever KPI is dropping, then that's where I want to spend myself and my team's time to develop systems and processes and a strategy to target that, to increase that number. So I think now's, we've all been through that time where you had to pull the holy shit cord, and there's lots of changes and decisions that had to be made. But yeah, look, particularly from the two of you, I'm just getting, now's the time to shift gears. It's really about moving forward. What systems, what processes, what people, how can you unify everyone around a plan and then implement that so you can start to get some wins, and then hopefully it'll really hit the ground running in 5 months' time. Warren, yesterday we were talking about the COVID-19 and how they talk about in the news that a certain number of people that are affected or have died from COVID. But I love the article that you put out that actually identifies that basically everyone has COVID. It's the form of COVID that you may or may not think that you have. Would you like to elaborate on the e-COVID-19?
Look, I will. I was doing some work on this over the last week or so, and trying to get the message, to cut through the message to business owners that virtually through the economic impact of COVID, and I'm calling it e-COVID-19, really ingenious, isn't it? That everyone has been affected by COVID. Even if you never actually get the human version of the virus, everyone has been affected, and it's going to last longer than what we first thought. And it's already killed thousands of businesses in Australia, and probably hundreds of thousands of businesses around the world. And it's potentially going to continue its rampage as we go forward. And I don't want to go on about this too much today, but as I was saying before, the Panadol is going to wear off, and they haven't got a cure for the human version of the virus. Time's going to be the cure for the economic version. And if anyone wants to do some reading on history, just go back and read the history of some pretty deep downturns and what happens in the economy and how long it takes to recover. And there's been some reports, even today's Fin Review, about how long it takes from even a modest recession, how long it takes to turn the unemployment back down from 10% to 5%. It takes years. It's taking weeks at the moment to climb, and probably a few more months, and it'll take years to turn back around. And that human effect is going to flow through, because it's also going to affect individuals' day-to-day lives, but it's going to keep affecting businesses, because they won't have the underlying demand that's going to pick it back up. That's why it's so slow to come back out.
I think if I could chime in there too, Warren, it's very interesting you talk about what you're saying, the economic COVID that we've all got. Reality is they haven't ever come up with a vaccine for a coronavirus. I've got some knowledge in this. I've always had an interest in this. SARS, they couldn't come up with a virus vaccine, MERS, et cetera, et cetera. COVID is 10 times more contagious. I could talk about quite detailed of why or why not that virus has done what it's done. The point is, if they don't come up with a vaccine, which honestly is not likely for some time, we're going to get a complete change of our lives. We are going to be more insular. We're going to have a lot more dinner parties. We're not going to go out to restaurants as much because we can't. Restaurants won't be as sustainable. No travel and tourism. There will be a lot more in-personal meetings like on Zoom, and they'll change things. So our whole economy is going to shift. So you really, I personally, I'm forecasting to 22 at the moment, how much of an impact it's going to have on industry. And we're pretty fortunate in regards to data. We deal with 122 awards, thousands of clients. We know what's happening in pretty much every sector and how that's affecting their business. And there's some good stories and some bad stories. But at the end of the day, you are 100% correct. It's going to take, so people saying, oh, by March we'll get back to some sort of normality. I really, really do not agree. I think it'll be at least another 12 months post that to get any normalcy. I think we've got short memories. I remember in 2008, I had a manufacturing business. I was exporting products all over the world. 50% of my export market was the US market, right? And then everything happened. So I had to work like a cut cat for 3 years post that to get back to where I had to get to. 3 years. So I worked incredibly hard to maneuver my business, and in the end was able to sell it. But it certainly changed the way my business operated significantly, and we didn't have a virus that affected that. So I certainly think, plan for at least the medium term, and I'm talking medium term, June 30, 2022 is at least.
Yeah. Well, so on that, I think what comes up for me, and even a question to answer is, what's your advice, and what's some of the things you've seen businesses do to support their team that are working from home? Because from my perspective, I'm seeing, a lot of our clients, their staff are at home, but even on Zooms, like their kids it's a different world. You've got your kids, you've got your family. There's a whole home environment there to cater for. I'm curious. What have you seen, and what tips do you have for people watching or listening?
I think it's a hard one. We had a meeting on Friday last week, and we said, what are we going to look like when we come back? And it's like, do people like mix desks up to the hot desk? Do we have a set day that everyone's there, but the rest of the week is flexible? At their working from home at the moment, we, my CFO and I, we sent everyone a little gift box this week to say thanks for all your efforts and so on and so forth. Personally speaking, I think it's great to do a morning scrum and an afternoon scrum to have a chat about what things are going on, etc. But it can sometimes almost be a little bit disingenuous, and it's not that that's intended. It's just that it's really hard via Zoom when you've had so many Zooms to get genuine, feel like it's being genuine. Quite personally, I'm like, I can't thank my staff enough for what they're doing and how they've gone about it. And I still want to see improvement even in this environment. I think what's important is to think about what are the new expectations. You know what? If you don't start, I'm even thinking what works for each business, and everyone's different. You know what? I'm going to start work at 9 o'clock, and I'm going to take 2 hours off during the middle of the day to have lunch with my kids. And I'm going to work after work to do my admin, as an example, right? Because during the day, I've got to put my kid down to rest, and then I've got to do this. And so you've got to find out personally what works for each employee and work out, if you are working from home, how that can be maneuvered so everybody gets a benefit, because working from home is really, really tough on especially a working mum or working dad. You've got kids running in. You're not as productive on some times of the day, but you're productive on other times of the day. Employees need to go start asking questions. So productivity for you, what does that look like now? And what times of the day are you more productive? And you need to then listen and go, well, how does that work for both parties now? I think that's the question.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think so. What my advice has been to the business owners, to the team, is for the team members almost need to be like their own business owners at home. So in our businesses we have structures, we have team meetings, we have roles, we have responsibilities, we have KPIs. So I think it's really important. I was just yesterday that I was having the conversation with someone, and I was just said, like it might be weird, but at the next dinner table, take a notepad and pen, and then start with, where do we see this family going? What's important to us? Like me and my wife, it's about easy and fun. If it's not easy, if it's not fun, we don't want to do it. But especially in this environment, sometimes cleaning the kitchen, if we're stressed, it can wait until tomorrow morning or something like that. But then underneath that, get clear what's important for, the husband or the wife to be able to complete their tasks. What are their tasks in the house? Get clear who takes out the bins, who doesn't take out the bins. I know it sounds weird, but I think if you have a structure at home, if you have clear roles and responsibilities, you can still help each other out. But I think just getting that conversation clear, having a bit of a goal for the family, having a philosophy for the family, getting clear on expectations. Me and my wife, very early on, we coined this term called invisible expectations. And it's sometimes like you can expect something from your partner, or like maybe you're emotional and you expect that they might pick up on something because they've been with you for a while. And so, what we always want to do is talk about those invisible expectations. So I think, at home, particularly if you've got kids, my business partner's got 3 kids and they're all in school. And that's tough, hats off to him. But I think I just love, that we've got a big whiteboard, got, the tasks down, scheduled in. Some things only need to be done fortnightly. Some only need to be done every week. And then, who does what. It's just a bit of organization. But I think that conversation is great to have with your team. And then, and to empower their team to have those kind of conversations at home. If you have an organized home, you're less stressed, you can work well, that feeds into the business, which then feeds into the results.
I think point, if you're lucky enough to have a partner that can support you, it's really important that, I would say, I'm very lucky with my wife. She's incredibly amazing at being multitasking, kids, housewife, professional person, awesome, time manager. And I really, support what she does for myself. But what we have as not negotiables is her routine. And she understands during the day, I've got this, when I come home, I'm present, and so on and so forth. So if you're not got a partner, and you're self-isolating and you're by yourself, I think what we're also talking about is your employer understanding what routine works best for you. Because there's some people out there that do work and they're with their workmates, and then they're at home and they make their spag bowl, and that's the highlight of their day. And they've got nothing else.
Spag bowl is good.
Spag bowl is good, don't get me wrong. But it's important to actually encourage a team. Like Julian, who works in Happy HR, put out this whole bunch of slides about on LinkedIn and other about create a routine. And if you haven't got one, do this. If you haven't come out of COVID-19 you've read a new book, or you've done this or you've done that, create a new routine that works for you, that has some sort of long-lasting benefits. But I think it's important for an employer to understand what works best for you, A, and B, what is going to be a routine that works for your professional and personal life. I think that's a really important, as people are working from home, like people can shut off at 5 o'clock, but do they really? Can they really? or you might say as an employer, stop work at 5 o'clock, shut your computer down. It's actually safe. You can do that. Just because you're at home, there's a lot of expectations from employers right now that I've seen. Why have you turned your computer off? It's 5 o'clock. Like, you know?
Yeah. Well, it's an invisible expectation, isn't it?
It's like you finish at 5, you should finish at 5. And you should be okay with that as long as they've done what you've said, Troy. They've ran that day. They've been as productive as they could possibly be. They can hand on heart at that 4:45 scrum with the team say, I was accountable today. This is what I achieved and I'm really proud of my efforts. When they turn on the computer at 5, then go for a run, do some stretching, cook a nice meal, Zoom with a friend, whatever, but create a routine, something that's going to work. Because a routine is important. And post-COVID-19, like we're going to have, it's going to be a while till I don't know about you, but are you going to go out and shake someone's hand? Wait a second. Is this okay? There's going to be confusion with our social norms. So that's going to be the case with our work routines. What's the regular routine now? So again, have that conversation with your employees or encourage your employees to say, tell us what works for you. If we can find a productivity line we're both happy with, then let's try that. It might be perfect or imperfect, but nonetheless, let's try.
Yeah, sure. And look, I want to add this is that, sometimes people don't realize, like, I think a lot of business owners can sometimes find these things awkward or uncomfortable to do, but just know that there are people like our team or like Chris out there that can actually do the conversations with you, run the team meetings, and support you. So if you don't feel comfortable, it's just like any other sport. You've got to watch someone do it well, do it with them, and then take it on your own and do it on your own. I think sometimes business owners, we see business, like we started it ourselves. I don't know about you guys, but I did. I started on the phone calling myself and then slowly built it up, and you stumble a lot along the way. But, I think if you do, the best part is identifying what aren't you good at, and then how can you get some support in that area so that you can just keep ticking those boxes. That's the whole Henry Ford take on things, isn't it? Push a button and get it done. So look, I'm just conscious of time. I'm just making sure we stick to things. So we'll start to wrap up. So if anyone's got some last or final questions, please enter them in now. And same with Chris and Warren, if you've got any final things to say. But before we get into that, I just wanted to let you know that this is being recorded. So if you wanted to share this with your team instead of having to parrot it, hopefully tonight or tomorrow, depending on Rob, he's listening in, we'll prepare an email and send it out to you. So you'll be able to watch the video, hand it out to all of your team. We've also got some checklists in here for you. So we've got some government grant checklists that you can go through. We've got a COVID-19 checklist in terms of a business health check. So, are you focusing on the survival and then the thrive elements? We've also got a marketing checklist. So a lot of people are needing to focus on marketing and sales. So if you want to do a bit of a health check on your strategy and your systems, make sure you download it. So there's a lot of content there, but download it. There should be something there for you. The biggest thing that I'm taking from this, which wasn't really the outcome to start with, is focusing on moving forward. What's the plan? How are we moving forward? And how are we all working together? At the moment, we're going to be running these podcasts quite regularly. I encourage you to come along. Give us your feedback. You'll get the email from me. Who do you want to see? What support do you want? What do you want to see some of our clients and what they're doing? Do you want to, to help us out with some ideas? It's about helping you overcome your frustrations to achieve your new version of freedom, whatever that looks like. So, Chris and Warren, any final thoughts or before we wrap up for today?
I'd just probably pick up on what you just said there, Troy, about focusing on the going forward. I couldn't emphasise that enough. And I think if I could get the message across to business owners at the moment, and everyone's got a different type of business, is really focus, as what Chris said, on what your new vision or what your clear vision needs to be, and look at your macro strategy development. You've got to set up a series of macro development solutions. And they may not actually technically be called solutions because it depends which one you take and which path you take. But I really encourage people to think bigger picture at the moment rather than just rely on that great strategy called hope. Let's hope it works out. because I haven't heard hope work too often.
Yeah.
I think on that as well, as a closing thing, this is a time where as a director, it's a really lonely place at the top because of all the personal expectations you need to do as a company director. Because you're shorter on time, you won't have the time to make all the best research. You won't have the time to research as well, which will mean poorer decision making. It is important to start to think to yourself, who do I speak to as a company director? And I'd encourage everyone to go and work with a coach or a business advisor that can help you make the best decisions possible. So you've got a true sounding board that someone's going to sound you out on your decision making and say, you've got that idea or that gut feel, but let's really talk about where that space is coming from and is that in fact the right decision? Or you need to go and get some research or some knowledge in this area before you make that decision for this clear area. So please go get some professional support, because you can't possibly know all the answers right now. Like Troy just said, government grants, etc. There is a minefield of positives and negatives there. You need professional advice. By getting that, you are going to have a better outcome for your business. So my advice is think about your vision and then go get a sounding board of someone who can actually help you to make better decisions.
Beautiful. Thank you very much, Chris. Thank you, Warren. Thank you for everyone listening or watching on. Look, it's been a great conversation. I've taken a lot from it myself as well. I look forward to seeing everyone potentially on the next podcast. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Troy.
Thank you very much for hosting. Cheers.
Thank you. Bye.